On a crisp autumn evening, the Tonight Show studio buzzed with anticipation. The crowd, a vibrant mix of tourists and locals, clapped rhythmically as the house band played an upbeat tune. Stage lights gleamed, and the crew darted about, ensuring every detail was perfect for the live broadcast. Mark Wahlberg, Hollywood's tough guy icon with a storied career and a no-nonsense reputation, was the night's main guest. He was there to promote his latest action thriller, a gritty return to his roots that had fans and critics buzzing. Backstage, Wahlberg cracked a smile, chatting lightly with producers. He'd done this dance before: walk out, wave, charm the crowd, plug the movie, and maybe share a laugh or two. Routine. Professional. Easy. As the show's theme music blared, Jimmy Fallon bounded onto the stage, his grin wide and his energy infectious. His opening monologue landed well: jokes about politics, a viral internet cat, and a playful jab at the latest superhero flick drew laughs from the audience. Then came the moment to introduce Wahlberg. "Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Mark Wahlberg." Fallon shouted, arms wide. The crowd roared as Wahlberg strode out, all Boston swagger, flashing a quick wave before settling into the guest chair. His navy suit was sharp, his demeanor relaxed but alert, like a boxer ready for a friendly spar. "Mark, great to have you back, man," Fallon said, leaning forward with his trademark enthusiasm. "You look fantastic." "Thanks, Jimmy," Wahlberg replied, shifting comfortably. "Always good to be here." Fallon held up a glossy poster of Wahlberg's new movie, the title in bold red letters. "So, this film looks intense: explosions, fights, classic Mark Wahlberg action." "We'll get to that, but first," his tone shifted, a subtle edge creeping in. "There's been some stuff online lately, about your past in Boston. Some folks saying maybe it's time to address those old incidents more directly, especially now that you're this big star." The studio went quiet. The audience, expecting light banter about car chases or on-set stories, sensed the air change. Wahlberg's smile faded, his jaw tightening just enough to notice. He leaned back, crossing his arms. "Jimmy, I've talked about my past plenty," he said, his voice calm but firm, the Boston accent thick. "I've owned up to my mistakes, apologized, and worked hard to do better. That's not why I'm here tonight." Fallon, undeterred, pressed on. "Sure, but with everything going on in the world, accountability, consequences, don't you think just saying sorry might not cut it anymore?" His tone wasn't playful. It carried a challenge, almost accusatory, and the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Wahlberg's eyes narrowed. "Listen, Jimmy," he said, his voice steady but with a growing edge, "I don't know what kind of show you're trying to run here, but this isn't what we agreed on. I came to talk about my movie, not dig up stuff from 30 years ago that I've already dealt with." The tension was electric. Backstage, Wahlberg's publicist froze, her clipboard clutched tightly. The audience, no longer laughing, exchanged glances. Fallon, though, didn't pivot. "I'm just asking what the audience wants to hear," he said, leaning in with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Isn't that what good journalism is about?" Wahlberg's laugh was sharp, humorless. "Journalism? Since when is the Tonight Show about journalism? You play games, you read funny tweets, you toss basketballs with celebrities. This is supposed to be fun, not some gotcha interview." The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, others unsure where this was headed. Fallon's face tightened, but he doubled down. "I think our audience is smart enough for serious conversations, Mark. Maybe you're just not used to being held accountable." The words landed like a punch. Wahlberg's eyes flashed, and the studio fell dead silent. "Held accountable?" he repeated, his voice rising. "Who made you the accountability police, Jimmy? You promised me a straightforward interview about my movie. You looked me in the eye backstage and said you were excited to hear about it. Now you're ambushing me? Let's talk about your accountability, lying to my team about what this segment would be." Fallon's grin faltered, but he didn't back off. "You're getting pretty defensive for someone who says they've got nothing to hide," he shot back, his tone dripping with condescension. Maybe Hollywood's been kissing your feet too long. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. This wasn't the Fallon they knew, the goofy, affable host who danced with guests and laughed at his own bad jokes. This was something else, something mean-spirited. Wahlberg's face cycled through shock, anger, and something like pity. "You know what, Jimmy?" he said, his voice low and controlled. "I've done this for 25 years. I've sat with real journalists, tough interviewers who know how to ask hard questions with respect. What you're doing? It's not journalism. It's not even entertainment. It's just cheap." Fallon laughed, but it was a brittle sound. "Cheap? What's cheap is expecting softball questions while you plug your movie. The days of celebrity worship are over, Mark." "Celebrity worship?" Wahlberg's voice rose, his famous temper flickering. "I never asked for worship. I asked for basic respect, the kind your producers promised. You want to play investigative reporter? Fine. But don't lie to my team. Don't ambush your guests. And don't pretend this is about accountability when it's really about you trying to look important." The band, usually quick with a musical cue to ease awkward moments, sat frozen. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the unraveling scene. Fallon, sensing the crowd's unease, tried to pivot. "Well, folks," he said, turning to the audience with a theatrical shrug, "guess we're seeing the real Mark Wahlberg tonight, not the movie star, but the guy who can't handle tough questions." The audience didn't laugh. Some looked shocked, others confused. Wahlberg's face hardened. "You just made a huge mistake, Jimmy," he said, his voice low and furious. "You don't know me. You don't know my story. And you clearly don't know what professionalism means. I came here to talk about a movie, a project a lot of people poured their hearts into. I came to entertain your audience, to support your show. And you turned it into a personal attack for no reason I can figure out." Fallon, now visibly rattled, tried to de-escalate. "Mark, you're taking this too seriously. It's just TV. Things get heated. That's what makes it interesting." "Interesting?" Wahlberg's laugh was bitter. "You think lying to people and ambushing them is interesting? You think disrespecting your audience is good TV? This isn't just television to me, Jimmy. This is my reputation, my career, my life you're messing with for your own entertainment." The studio was a pressure cooker. Audience members clutched their phones, some recording, others whispering. The producers, offstage, looked panicked, but the raw intensity of the moment kept the cameras rolling. Fallon tried one last time to regain control. "Mark, I respect you, I do. Maybe I came at this wrong. Let's start over, talk about your movie, have some fun." Wahlberg stared at him, incredulous. "Start over? You think you can spend 15 minutes trying to humiliate me on national TV and then just hit reset? You attacked my character, my integrity, and now you want to pretend it didn't happen? That's not how this works, Jimmy." Fallon's face flushed, his usual charm gone. "I wasn't trying to humiliate you," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I was just trying to have a real conversation. These shows are always so fake." "Real conversation?" Wahlberg's voice boomed. "You want real? Let's talk about how you called my publicist yesterday and swore this would be a fun, light interview. Let's talk about how your producers promised no gotcha questions. Let's talk about how you looked me in the eye and lied, Jimmy." The audience was riveted, the silence heavy with shock. Fallon glanced nervously toward the wings, where his producers stood frozen. "Mark, you're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be," he said weakly. "A bigger deal?" Wahlberg's voice cracked with raw emotion. "Do you know what it's like to have someone you trusted, someone whose show you've supported, turn around and try to tear you down for entertainment? Do you have any idea how that feels?" The hurt in his voice was undeniable, and the audience felt it. Some leaned forward, others looked away, as if witnessing something too raw for public view. Fallon's next words were a mistake. "Maybe you're not as tough as you act in your movies," he said with a smirk. All that Boston tough guy stuff, is it just for show? That was the breaking point. Wahlberg leaned forward, his eyes locked on Fallon's. You want to talk toughness, Jimmy? Toughness is growing up poor in Dorchester, scraping by, and building something better. Toughness is owning your mistakes and working every day to be better. Toughness is not sitting in a cozy studio, throwing cheap shots at guests who trusted you. The power in the room had shifted completely. Wahlberg's authenticity, his raw anger and hurt, filled the space, while Fallon looked small, a host who'd misjudged his mark and was now drowning. I think you're overreacting, Fallon said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's just TV. Just TV? Wahlberg stood, his movements deliberate. You think that makes it okay to lie, to ambush people, to use my past, stuff I've owned, apologized for, learned from, to score points? This isn't a game to me, Jimmy. The audience held its breath as Wahlberg unclipped his microphone, setting it on the table with a soft clink. I'm done, he said, his voice calm but final. Done with this conversation, done with this interview, done with you. You want to play games with people's lives? Fine. But I'm out. Mark, wait, Fallon called, panic creeping into his voice. Don't leave. We can talk about your movie. That's what people want. Wahlberg paused at the edge of the stage, turning back with a look of pure contempt. Now you want to talk about my movie? After trying to tear me down? It's too late, Jimmy. You made your choice when you decided to ambush me. You disappointed this audience, not me. They came for entertainment, and you gave them a hit job. The crowd was silent, some filming, others stunned. Wahlberg's voice softened, but the weight of his words carried. This is what happens when you forget there's a person behind the celebrity. When you think you can treat people like garbage and expect them to smile. When you confuse being a talk show host with being a journalist, and fail at both. Fallon's face was pale, his hands fidgeting. Mark, please, he said. Let's finish the interview. Talk about whatever you want. Wahlberg shook his head, almost sadly. This isn't about finishing, Jimmy. It's about integrity. It's about keeping your word. It's about treating people like humans. You failed tonight. With that, he turned and walked off stage, his footsteps echoing in the silent studio. The cameras lingered on Fallon, who sat motionless, his usual energy gone, a man who just lost a battle he didn't expect to fight. The audience, still processing the chaos, watched as the show cut abruptly to commercial. The fallout was immediate. Clips of the confrontation spread like wildfire, sparking debates across the country. Some called Wahlberg's walkout a bold stand against unprofessionalism, others thought he'd overreacted. But one thing was clear, this was a moment no one would forget, a raw, unscripted clash that exposed the fragility of trust in the spotlight.